that lends a lot of credibility. If you come in and can be upfront and honest and say, actually in this application, I think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That all of a sudden now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman.
And I often say that we have all the requirements of space, right? Because it has to go underground and send us data from miles and miles away, and it has to work. Like, failure is not an option.
We'll put on, a standard mule shoe. Ours is slightly different just for that, but it's, everybody's got one.
The top drive and the drawworks really don't care whether the electrons coming at it are from a joystick or a PLC.
The panel, what you see here on the left, which is now controlled by one of my students, is showing you actually the control of our brakes.
As of now, geothermal is a pretty small market.
If you have tortuosity, the casing will be up against the side on part of the well. There won't be any cement there. The cement will have crescent around it.
So managed pressure drilling, it's been defined as a process to precisely control the pressure profile in the wellbore.
The key is being transparent with our clients in this case. So tell them what happened. If we had a failure, tell them exactly what happened. Whether it's our fault, whether it's whatever the issue was, we need to be transparent.
I think it's very important for everyone in the industry to know what's out there and kind of what's happening downhole as well.
I've probably worked on over 40 different performance limiters in my career. If I miss any of those, and the computer is raising weight on bit, and I miss any of those, I have a train wreck. The computer's going in the ocean.
Here's your new colors, here's your new thing. We don't do that
at all. Here's the tattoo you need to get.
Yeah, here's the tattoo. Sorry about the last one. We used to fake that all the time.
And welcome to the show. My heart is beating out of my chest. It's been way too long since I have done this. I think it's been about 7 months since we did a Vidor Locksmith show. So I apologize for everybody for taking this long to be able to get back onto here, but came back for an incredible cause and an incredible reason to be here. And that is to be able to bring all of you, 3 of the 5 candidates for the Texas Railroad Commissioner position. So we're having that forum here today. So do me a favor. I don't really ask of this very often, but please, please, please do me a favor. Whatever social media platform you're watching on, we are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Do me a favor and share this. Tell people to watch, because there's no greater important privilege and or right that we have in U.S. as well as in the great state of Texas, but to be able to vote. So this is something that is not really for the show, but for everyone out there, right? So please, please, please share. If you're watching on LinkedIn, maybe sharing is not the best thing because the algorithm really doesn't like that all that much. Maybe just tag somebody in the comments and say, hey, you should be watching this. And hopefully everybody is safe, sound, and warm today, and not without power, because that's definitely something that will probably be brought up today. It's almost the anniversary of last year's snowpocalypse, so I think that will probably be brought up several times today. But this is the Vidor Locksmith Show, where we're unlocking the secrets to success, one interview, one technical presentation, and one technical screw up at a time. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm your host, David Gibson. If you haven't already, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Please follow me there. I'll say it. I'm going to start doing better about putting out good content there and bringing you guys the show. So thank you guys all so much for being here. It's great. So first things first, for everybody that is watching, we're already up over 50 people tuning in right now. Let us know where you're watching from. I know it's been a long time. So it says can't post some comments to some destinations. Oh, okay. So just making sure I haven't used StreamYard in a while, so things are little, I'm glitching more so than what's going on here. And what I am seeing is that there's a lot more comments showing up on LinkedIn than what is showing up in StreamYard. So I'm not getting all of the comments there. So hopefully that will catch up so that I can start putting everybody's thing up there. Let us know where you're watching from. If you've ever seen the Vidor Locksmith Show before, please let us know. What was your favorite episode? And please let me know who is the candidate that you were cheering for? Feel free to be able to put it up there. We've got no problem being able to show that. And if you've got any questions, be sure to start throwing those out there. Here's the order of what we're going to do. So I'm going to go through, do my little monologue piece as I normally do as we are kind of ramping up and getting everybody kind of tuning in. If you don't like that, then go get yourself a coffee, do something else, come back in about 5 minutes. We're going to thank the organizations that helped put this all together. I'm going to do a quick little giveaway. I got a purple one today. And then we're going to introduce all of the candidates. I will ask them one question. Then we've got an amazing person here, Matt Stringer, who's going to come on, and he is going to facilitate 2 questions himself. And then we're going to turn it over to live Q&A from the audience. I also forgot to say, before I do my one question, we introduce clients that are candidates, not clients. The candidates, they're going to get a 2-minute opener, and then we'll also do a 2-minute closer at the end. So thank you all so much for being here. We really, really do appreciate it. JP says, beard looking high and tight. Good being here, and thanks for putting this together. I'm going to be honest. I didn't really put this together. I did really minimal amount of work. The people that really put this together, and I should go ahead and thank them right now. Let me scroll up and find the graphic for it. So special thanks to the Permian Basin of American Association of Drilling Engineers, specifically Janie Snelson, who is an absolute godsend, not only to the great state of Texas, but also to our industry. Thank you so much, Janie, for all of your hard work that has gone on behind the scenes, not only with this event, but many others that you've done for the industry. So thank you so much. Also, the Permian Basin Association of Directional Drilling, association near and dear to my heart. Lots of good people over there, Tony and Mike Elphick. So thank you all so much for the help. Also, American Petroleum. What is beeping? Oh, the camera just died. Okay, American Petroleum Institute Permian Basin chapter, thank y'all, and the IADC Permian Basin chapter as well. Thank you all so much for everything that y'all have done to be able to put on this event. Alphabet soup galore there. All right, back to saying hi to everybody that has commented. So we've got LinkedIn user tuning in from Colorado. Thank you so much for being here. Matt Hill puts on a lot of great content. Y'all be sure to follow him as well. This is great. Great to see it. We've got Richard Well, who is actually running for Congress, so another political candidate. Look forward to hear this. We got Michael Long says greetings. Speaking of which, there is Janie Snelson. Tony tuned in from Midland. He's part of the PBAD, and also Anadrol. Thank you for being here. Stacy Jones watching from Oklahoma. Look, there it is. Mike Elphick. Thanks for being here, sir. He's also with Directional. Got to shout out to everybody here. Dan Aisley from Chile, Houston. We've got Jason Ellison from Midland, Texas. Hans says, good morning, Gibson. Thank you guys for being here. Whitesboro, Clay, LinkedIn user from Houston, Texas. LinkedIn user, whoever that is the greatest follower of the show. Robert from Midland. Jason from Ohio. Is that how you say it? I don't know. It's in Texas. I don't know how to pronounce all the names in Texas. Says, good luck, Matthew Stringer. He's not running, but he's going to be asking some good questions. We've even got some people from north of the borders here. Graham, thanks for being here. Northwest Houston. Watching with interest from Houston, Texas. Asked Tom Slocum his opinion on resolving orphan wells. He took the time to talk by phone over 1.5 hours. Oh, well, okay. We'll be sure to get with that one. Thanks to all 3 questions. So Clay's here. Gabriel Cruz. Oh, sorry, you guys. These are like starting to come in real fast and quick, and I can't keep up with everything. Jacob Brewster. He's one of the other people that helped out with being able to put all of this on. So special thanks to him. Thank you guys all so much for being a part of this and your comments and questions and everything that's going to keep coming in. Okay, can I get rid of this thing? Okay. It's in the way. Stop it. All right. I don't know. There's like a little warning thing. It's like right there, and I can't see what the questions are saying. So, hello from Austin. Sun just came out. AE01231. So thank you, AE01231. We appreciate it. And then Mitzi from Southern California. Awesome. All right, guys, thank y'all. So, like I said, thank y'all all so much. All right, we're already up over, we've got 7 watching via YouTube, 8, YouTube and Facebook. We've already got 57. So like I said, please share this. Tag somebody in the comments if you're on LinkedIn, or just share it on some of the other social media channels. Very important cause for today. All right, so we're already up over 11 minutes. I've already filled my monologue time. All right, so let's do this. We already did the sponsors. Let's do a quick little giveaway. All right, so here's what you guys got to do. All you got to do is in the comment section, whichever one you're watching on, is just type in Gibson. Start collecting comments, right? And that's all you got to do. So in the comment section, put Gibson. Actually, I think it was supposed to be hashtag Gibson. Sorry, hashtag Gibson. I said that wrong. I apologize. Put in hashtag Gibson. Let's see if this works. It's been a while since I've done this, so thank you all. David McKenzie, watching from Sweetwater, Texas. Thank you so much. Doug, oh wait, oops. I clicked the right one. There we go. Doug Taylor, good morning. Thanks for being here. Let's see. Oh, we've already got 6 entries. Yeah, I guess all you have to do is just type in Gibson. That's all you got to do. So the winner is going to get one of these fancy little drill bits. I put this one up on this. Is that camera working? No, that camera is dead. Oh, okay. If you guys are watching, let's see here. Just because we can do this, check this out. This is what it looks like. Go back to that one. That's what it looks like if you guys are watching on your mobile platforms. Pretty cool, huh? All right, back over to this one. And then we're gonna put this back up on the screen. Oops. Candidates are going crazy back there. All right, so we're already up to 23. Come on, you guys, all we gotta do is get a handful more. If you do it twice, it doesn't count. All you got to do it just once. Just once. That's all you need to do it. All right. So yes, right there. Hashtag Gibson or Gibson. I got a blue billet and having drilling millions of feet now. Haha. Thanks. All right. So Mark McKenzie, everybody's jumping in on this one. Thank you guys for all being here. All right. All right. We've got some audience participation. 23 is good enough, even though we've got almost double that. All right. Let's make the drawing. So whoever does win this, shoot me a DM afterwards, give me your address, and we will get this one over to you. If you don't like purple, then we'll get you a different color. All right, here we go. Draw. Let's see who the lucky person is. I have a feeling it should be Janie Snelson. Anybody. And the winner is Zachary Power. Zachary, thank you so much for being here. Zach. Get over to him. All right. Thank you so much. There we go. Fun stuff. All right. Always something new here on the Vidor Locksmith Show. Actually, it's not new. I was the first person to be able to do that, but whatever. Okay. So we've done the sponsor, we've done the giveaway. I'm going to do a quick little 20-second thing, and we're going to come back and introduce you to all of the candidates we have here today. Where is the button? So if you have not already, please check out YouTube and check out. This is the How It's Done show, and if your company wants to be a part of it, let me know. We're still doing stuff for season 2. Candidates after this. All right, enough of me blabbing. That was the How It's Done show. It's all on YouTube, 10 episodes already. If you guys want more, go check it out there. All right, so in order that I have them all here on the bottom of the screen, so that in no particular order, I'm going to bring up the 3 candidates we have here. I will make just a quick little asterisk note for today. If you do not see the candidate that you wanted to hear from, I apologize. Everybody was invited. Emails were sent. People committed, people decommitted. The 3 candidates that you have here are the ones that were willing to be able to take on your questions and my questions live. So without further ado, thank you for being here, Mr. Tom Slocum. You're on mute, sir. And I can't unmute you.
There you go. How's it going? Good morning, sir.
Thank you for being here. All right, next up, Dwayne Tipton. Dwayne, thank you for being here, sir.
Good morning.
And then finally, last but not least, Sarah Stoddard. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. All right. So here's what we're going to do first. I didn't draw straws, but with the way that we did this just now, we'll give each one of the candidates 2 minutes to do their opening intro. So I'll take everybody back off the screen, even though we just brought them on. And Tom, we will let you go first, then Dwayne, and then Sarah to follow up on the 2-minute intro. So here we go. Remove.
Well, good morning. My name's Tom Slocum. I live in Houston, Texas, and if you know me from LinkedIn, you know I've been working in the oil and gas industry my entire life. I'm 4th generation oil and gas, and I'm 5th generation Texan. I care deeply about Texas, its people, the farmers, the ranchers, and our industry. I know that the Railroad Commission has done some things here lately that I don't agree with, namely passing along $3.4 billion in debt to the taxpayers. That should not have happened. That's a tax. They call it securitization, but that's the main reason I'm running in this race is because I'm a fiscal conservative and I strongly disagree with what happened there. But I also disagree with how they're handling our debt and our budget and our money at the Railroad Commission. I also have issues with permitting that's going on in Texas. I was contacted by primary voters in East Texas about a landfill that's going on over there, and that Wayne Christian, the incumbent, has taken over $155,000 from a group of people called the High Roller Club to do this. I strongly disagree with putting landfills in Toledo Bend in our river valleys, and that's another great reason to be running for this position, to make sure we don't make dumb decisions and we don't have Anderson Cooper down here with video cameras trying to explain to people that Texas doesn't know what they're doing in oil and gas. So I also have the background and the knowledge of politics. I have a political science degree from Texas A&M. I've worked on numerous campaigns working to get people elected here. I've gone to the convention in Dallas in 2016. I was a delegate to the convention. I understand the party platform planks, and I'm a real conservative. I'm a real Republican. I've got the track record of working for this party to prove it. I also work the elections on West Gray Street in Houston every year. Doesn't matter what's going on. If there's an election, I'm down there working it because I believe in voter integrity, and I believe we got to have election integrity at our ballot box. So I don't just talk the talk, I'll walk the walk, and you can ask everybody in Houston, the SRC chairman, the people around here in Texas, they know me. I've been working in the party. So I'm really happy to be here today and answer your questions. And if you have any questions and you don't get to ask them in this setting, please don't feel free to contact me, get my cell phone number, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll talk to people for hours at a time. I got a lot of windshield time. So please just give me a ring. And thank you so much for your support, guys.
Doug, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. All right, we're going to take you off, sir. Thank you. And Mr. Dwayne Tipton to stream. And here's your 2 minutes. Go ahead and start, sir.
Good morning, everybody. If you hear a dog whining, that's just my Rottweiler. It's one of those things this morning. So my name is Dwayne Tipton. I started in the oil and gas industry right after graduating from college. I started out as a roughneck with a lot of hard work and dedication. I worked my way through the ranks, with the willingness to do what others wouldn't. I eventually wound up as a subject matter expert for the largest oil and gas insurer in the world. So when it comes to oil and gas operations in Texas, I've either been boots on the ground or I've assessed and made recommendations to the operators. And that's the type of experience you need in oil and gas. You need somebody that knows how operators operate, knows what the best recommendations and the best way to mitigate risk. The catalyst for me running for this position was how Winter Storm Uri was handled. Mr. Christian was really just asleep at the wheel. If he had picked up the phone and made a couple calls to ERCOT and implored them not to shed the critical path load for power generation, I don't think that last year's storm would have gotten nearly as bad as it was as far as the outage. If I'm elected, a couple other things that I'm going to do is I'm going to overhaul the inspection and regulation arm of the RRC. Number one, I'm going to make it a more efficient operation. Number two, we're going to stop how they're currently inspected. We're going to use trend-based and data analytics in the inspections, because right now it just appears that the RRC is the last to know when to what's going on out in the field. And that's got to change. So the real keys, what we need somebody in the RRC is that somebody that understands what's going on out in the field, the way to make the recommendations to do what's best for Texas families. And that really brings you to my platform, which is Texas Families First, Texas Energy First, and Energy Independence. And if you ask what that means, it means tackling problems like the winterization and weatherization, so that we're not left out in the cold when Texans need power. Finally, the thing I'll ensure that if you vote for me, I'm going to ensure that every decision that's undertaken is going to be the best for Texas families, maximizing the resources for all Texans.
Dwayne, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. And all right, we will move on here to the next one, to Sarah Stogner. Sarah, you ready? All right, your 2 minutes starts. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. My name is Sarah Stogner. For the past 14 years, I've been an oil and gas lawyer, and I've represented primarily operators, service companies, and midstream companies in understanding, contracting, and when necessary, litigating risk issues. So I've represented operators in well control insurance coverage. We all know that when there's a lot of money at stake, unfortunately, people decide to hire lawyers and fight about it because it's cheaper doing that than it is to just pay the valid claim. And last summer, I moved out onto a cattle ranch in West Texas. An old well came unplugged that Chevron had plugged in the 90s. And over the next, 9 months, wherever we are now, I've realized that we've got some really big problems with crony capitalism in Austin. And you've got pay to play, and it's not all operators getting a fair shake. You've got the super majors, and they're fighting amongst themselves, and people can't decide what we're going to do about our earthquakes and our produced water situation and our flaring and securing the grid. And so I'm going to be one of 3 people, and I can't promise a huge amount of change. What I can promise is that I will bring integrity, I will bring transparency, and that I will give everyone equal access. And I'm going to enforce the regulations that are on the books because they're mostly good. They just need to be enforced.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. All right, so now we'll bring back on all of the candidates. Oh, sorry, Matt, wrong one. Click the wrong spot. Matt will be here in just a second. He's a, I don't know if you call it political pundit. He's a really smart guy, and he knows politics, and he's going to be asking better questions than what I could ask. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I've got one question that I'm going to post up here for everybody to be able to answer. We'll give everybody 90 seconds to be able to answer. We'll go in this order. Dwayne Tipton, then Mr. Slocum, and then Mr. Stogner after that. So there's a little bell that went off. So, Sarah, your time is now up, even though short and sweet. So that's good. All right. So my question is that because of the Texas Railroad Commission getting the majority of their funds coming from permits and from production fees, obviously when oil and gas is and always will be a cyclical industry, right now we really don't have that problem as more activity is becoming more and more abundant, but the industry is also becoming more efficient. So, less wells, less permits are having to be taken out as these wells become longer or you don't need as many on a singular lease. So going forward, how can we continue to be able to fund the Texas Railroad Commission with an industry that is becoming, one, more efficient, but also at the same time being able to protect against just being reliant on the price of oil? So, Mr. Tipton, I will turn it over to you first.
Well, you start with being more efficient in your operations. We need a leaner, cleaner railroad commission. If you lower the cost, then you've got more money to save for the future downturns. The other thing that we really need to focus on is understanding, the average life cycle of when it's going to downturn again. And we just really need you really just do more with less. You take what's available with the permitting and the revenue that's brought in, and you do less. You run a leaner, more efficient operation, and that's how you do it.
Thank you, sir. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Sorry, guys. There we go. Dwayne, I did not mean to take you off the screen. All right. Next up is Mr. Slocum. Your turn, sir.
Yeah. Saving money is one thing. that it is really important to work within the budget that we're given. The Railroad Commission budget is growing. Usually we were getting $269 million every 2 years, roughly that. They did increase it. They do plan on spending upwards of over $50 million to plug orphaned wells, but it's still actually not going to be enough to get us ahead of the curve. And so in order to get us ahead of that orphaned well curve, we have to come up with different ways of plugging these wells or turning these wells over to operators that can do something with them. So the entire orphaned well program does need to be closely examined, and that is where we can definitely save money. But also, if there's a situation where a well needs to be plugged, like, for example, the blowout geyser in Crane County, we have to make sure that we do the proper due diligence when that blowout occurs and figure out who really owns this. And if it's owned by an operator and it's not an orphaned well, they need to be paying for that. Wayne Christian had spoken to someone recently and said they've spent over $5 million out there on that saltwater blowout. If that's taxpayer money, I've got a huge problem with that as a fiscal conservative. So there's all kinds of ways that we can save big money. And a lot of it is just simply doing the right research in the landman department and finding out who's really liable for this stuff. That way, companies that should be paying for stuff like that are, and we've got money to go plug stuff where no one has money to plug it. So we've got to make sure that the money is being moved around properly and that the liability is being appropriately placed when we have accidents out there. But there's lots of other ways we can streamline the Railroad Commission with technology, et cetera. And I look forward to explaining more of that in detail.
All right, Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, so, I think that the fact that we spend half of the annual budget plugging orphaned wells is a testament to the failure of our current regulators. If any of us were in our jobs and our job is to supervise someone, and then the people that we're supposed to be supervising don't do what they're supposed to do, in what world other than this world do you get that money to go and do their job? So I think I agree with both of what Mr. Tipton and Mr. Slocum said. And then I'd also add that we're going to have some significant money coming from the federal government soon on this. And so we need to make sure that that doesn't get lost in the bureaucracy and that it is wisely used. And then I think that we should be penalizing the bad operators. There are lots of good operators out there. There's some really bad ones. And unfortunately, when the Railroad Commission levies fines, it's usually against defunct entities. So I think you need to use the fines when appropriate. But that, again, it needs to be fair, consistent, and I don't think that we're going to have a problem long term if we continue to use technology and actually do the job.
Sarah, thank you so much. All right, so my portion of asking questions is done. Hopefully everybody liked my question. If you don't, well, you can go watch something on YouTube. All right, so now we will bring in Matt. Here, add Matt to the stream here. Matt, thank you so much for being here, sir. Matt's good. I'm going to turn it over to him. Like I said, he's a really smart political guy, so he's going to ask better questions than I am. So, Matt, I will take myself off the screen, and it is all you.
Well, good morning, candidates. Thank you for being here, and thank you, David, for hosting this forum, and to the sponsors for making this event happen, and for letting me be a part of it. We'll go straight to my first question. Can you tell us about your past civic involvement, particularly any involvement in the Republican Party or with GOP candidates, the Texas legislature, or the Railroad Commission itself? I believe, Mr. Slocum, you can lead off with the first question.
Right. So, yeah, I've been working with the Railroad Commission year in and year out for over a decade, permitting wells. And not only do I understand Title 16, Section 1, Chapter 3, because my job depends on it. If I don't, I'll get run off, right? I have to know these regulations more than anybody because that is literally my job as a compliance guy in the field, making sure these permits are permitted correctly. I know why we have the regulations. I know why they were written to begin with. So I'm very aware of all of that. So I would say I'm very qualified as a candidate for Railroad Commission because I deal with those rules every day. But on top of that, my experience in the Republican Party goes deep. It goes all the way back to when I moved here in 2001. I graduated high school, went to Texas A&M, and got a political science degree and got very heavily involved in the party at a young age. And I ended up being an intern for Kay Bailey Hutchison. It was offered to me. I took that position very happily to work for her in her downtown office. And also from then on, I worked on several campaigns I worked in the industry because the industry made me money. I wasn't out there trying to be a career politician. I was out there making money, supporting the oil and gas industry as a strong advocate for what we create. But I also was a delegate to the convention in 2016, where I actually met Wayne Christian, and I actually thought he was a better person than Gary Gates, better right man for the job. But I have worked to get many people elected here in Harris County and in Texas, Senator Ted Cruz, Dan Crenshaw when he ran the first time. And I know what it takes to run a campaign, and I know what it takes to work with legislators in Austin. So if we want to end the flare gas tax, I can make phone calls. I can work on this legislation. I know what the policy prescriptions are to solve the problems here because I have this degree in political science, and I know how to make phone calls. I know how to get people interested in things like not taxing Texans. And you won't find a single person that wants to tax Texans $3.4 billion after I'm done running this campaign. I'm going to take Texas in a more fiscally conservative direction, and we're going to do it with bold leadership, strong leadership, and ethics and morals and standards that people in Texans really want.
Thank you. Next up is Sarah Stogner. Do you need me to repeat the question?
I think I got it. So I have never had political aspirations. I guess when I was in Louisiana, I was a registered Republican, but I usually vote on issues and by candidates. I try not to draw hard party lines when I'm voting. I was president of my neighborhood association. I've been involved in a lot of industry associations, the Association of Energy Service Companies. I've been on the Texas State Bar's Insurance Council, which is an elected position from all attorneys across the state. And, so I'm a lawyer, I'm a mom, I'm used to people being upset with me. I get blamed, right? When I make people mad all the time. And I don't have long-term political goals. I see a need right now that if we don't clean house within our industry, that I believe that the federal government's going to come in and really screw it up. And so it's going to take some tough love. But so I don't have a ton of political experience, but I do have a lot of leadership experience in the industry. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Tipton.
If you could repeat the question, I'd appreciate it.
The question is, can you tell us about your past civic involvement, particularly any involvement with the Republican Party, GOP candidates, the Texas legislature, or the Railroad Commission itself?
So, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a politician. I never strived to be a politician. Most of my civic involvement with the RRC or in general, I was a congressional intern in college. Most of the dealings I had with the RRC was when I worked for one of the largest oil and gas insurers in the world. So I understood what the regulations meant, how they affected operations, what happens if those regulations aren't followed, and the casualty and loss of the situation. I don't have higher aspirations for another office. What I do have is a really great skill set that fits this office, that fits this role, and I can make a big difference for Texans.
All righty, thank you so much. We'll go to my next question, and that is, if you win this election and become the next Texas Railroad Commissioner, you will assume office in January of next year, right as a fresh new session of the Texas legislature begins. What are the top 3 things you would like to ask the legislature for on behalf of the Texas Railroad Commission? Ms. Stogner, I believe you will go first.
Wow. Okay. So I think my top 3 priorities are, 1, making sure that our oil and gas economy remains viable and that we're strong and that we don't bow to kind of the leftist that's coming for us, right? Like we all know that as an industry, we haven't done a great job of standing up for ourselves. So what does that look like in legislative session? Well, I think 1, I would ask for some sort of legislation like Louisiana just passed this last year that encourages operators to adopt orphaned wells. You give them some severance tax relief, you put that money in trust for decommissioning from the beginning, and it's a win-win for everybody. So that's one of my ideas. I'd like to see how it works in Louisiana, but I like what they did this last time, and I think that there's some opportunities there. 2, I'd like to incentivize operators to come up with alternative uses for flare gas, right? I think that we've got a lot of great uses, but right now you've got maybe like old school thinking that doesn't understand that we can do some really great things, and make sure that good operators are rewarded. And again, the operators that don't do what they're supposed to do are held accountable. And then The third one, groundwater. You know, I'm really concerned about our groundwater resources especially in West Texas. And I think that there's going to be an opportunity for with the infrastructure bill. And again, there's all this federal money coming in. And so my priority will be to really help make sure that those federal funds are used wisely and again, not lost in the bureaucracy.
All righty. Thank you for that. Mr. Tipton.
Well, Sarah hit some really good points. I mean, she hit the nail on the head on a few of those that I would be wanting to follow as well. But one of my issues that I'd really want to finish out is the winterization and weatherization. You know, we got to make sure that, you know, they're claiming victory on how this was handled so far. And I'll say we'll see moving forward on how this winter storm plays out. We've had one day of cold temperatures versus, you know, an extended period. So we need to understand that we're ready for the next winter storm. That'd be my first initiative. You know, I agree with Sarah on her orphan wells, how to move forward with that. The only way I differ is I want to use it as you know, as we put into the budget or put into the contract as a means to put out of work oil and gas workers back to work. And every time there's a downturn in the industry, let's ramp up, because the rig rates are going to be much lower. Let's ramp up our handling of abandoned and orphan wells. So let's take the cyclical cycle and make it work for us. And thirdly, the thing that I'd really want to tackle is I want to move forward. It's not much as much as a legislative issue, but it's as a Texan issue. When you go to the RRC, you need to have a receptive district office. I was talking to a constituent the other day, and she was telling me how upset she was just because of how rude the RRC was. Sometimes you can't get things done, but you got to treat Texans with respect and let them know and let them feel like that even if you can't do anything, that you're hearing them and you're going to see what you can do.
All right, I appreciate that. And lastly, Mr. Slocum.
Yes, thank you. I've got real policy prescriptions. Like I said, I do have a political science degree, and I have talked to state senators and state reps out on the campaign trail about many of the things that we could do in Austin. Number one of the biggest things that I talk about that no one else talks about is mandatory bonding for windmills in the state of Texas, statewide bonding. That needs to happen. We need to level the playing field. That's out of the purview of the Railroad Commission, but it's something that our lawmakers in Austin should be definitely about right now. It's unfair for the oil and gas industry. We have to bond everything. People in oil and gas know this. We have statewide bonding, mandatory statewide bonding. The fact that we're letting big wind come in here and subsidize themselves even more is outrageous. And we need strong leadership in Austin that can grab the microphone and yell at these people and yell at these wind lobbyists that think they're so special and they deserve every dollar that they can possibly get out of Texans. This isn't right. It has to stop. I'm going to make that a top priority, actually, if I'm elected. The number two thing we really need to do is that we need to eliminate the flare gas tax. That's something else I've been talking about for years. Wyoming did it 2 years ago. It went into action last year. And, you know, there's a lot of Republicans that walk around Texas saying that we're the number one Bitcoin mining state in the nation. Well, maybe we are by volume, but you know what? Our policies could be a lot better. And ending that flare gas tax will help us put a lot more of that flare gas onto the grid. So when we do get in a cold weather situation, we can turn off our miners and sell electricity. So ending the flare gas tax, that's common sense. Statewide bonding for windmills, that's common sense. You know what else is common sense? When an oil company does go bankrupt and that bonding money is turned over, guess where it goes? It goes to the state legislature. It doesn't go to the Railroad Commission. It's not tied to the well bore. I've been talking about this for years as well, right? And guess what? There's not a single person in Austin that thinks that's a bad idea. We should take this bonding money and ship it straight to the Railroad Commission. That way, if that well really needs to be plugged, it gets plugged. We shouldn't ship it to Austin to these liberal policymakers who are going to stick their hand in the till and take money whenever they want to. So those are three policy prescriptions that I can work on immediately on day one. And I have friends in Austin that can help me out, get those things done to work for Texans, put in the real work that we need to do.
And I believe that's time. Candidates, thank you so much for your questions. Very thoughtful, very good conversation. David, once again, thank you so much for having me on today and for letting me be a part of this very important forum.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Matt. And if you want to stick around, if you've got some more questions written up or if you want to write up some more, go for it. All right, for everybody in the audience, this is your chance now to be able to ask your questions to the candidates, right? And we're going to give each candidate the opportunity to be able to respond. So even if it is for a specific candidate, we're still going to kind of work around there. And so I believe, so who's up next here? So since you just finished, so I believe the next one, Dwayne, you'll be the first one answering up now. All right, so I've already got a couple of the comments to be able to come in here. Let's go ahead and go over here to the start one. So these are a couple of the questions that we've had come in so far. Like I said, anybody out there that's watching, I know there's a 30-second time delay, so that's why I'm just kind of blabbering here for a little bit. Y'all go ahead and start asking your questions, and we'll start turning them over to the candidates. All right, so the first one comes up from Mr. John Connor. How will each of you address the inconsistencies and the lack of integrity in the data maintained by the Texas Railroad Commission, specifically the misrepresentation or lack of well locations for current and historical wells? Being somebody that's involved in the data and mining the data from the Texas Railroad Commission, I can definitely back this up. John, excellent question. Dwayne, we'll go first with you, then Mr. Slocum, and then Sarah, you will follow up.
As I stated in my opening comments, the inspection and regulation arm of the RRC needs to be overhauled. It needs to have more accountability, more transparency, and more integrity. If I'm elected, the first thing that we're going to tackle besides the winterization is having an overall understanding of what's going on with these abandoned wells, these orphan wells, use trend-based and data-based analytics so that we can hone in on what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and then tackle the problem. Besides just the information problem there is a lack of resolve in the Railroad Commission. They are not out there for actions, and we need somebody up there that's going to take action and get the great data and solve these problems.
Mr. Slocum, you're next.
Yeah, so this is a question about the data and the lack thereof, really, and the poor record keeping that we have of the Railroad Commission, which I have experienced myself. I do lots of well work. A lot of times I have to go to Austin, go down to the basement, and go through the microfiche and all this old material that's been buried away. This is 2022. Come on, people. All this stuff should be online. We shouldn't have to drive 8 hours across Texas to go pull a well file. Everything should be there. This is public records, okay? And we shouldn't have to have an army of people at the Railroad Commission to go dig through that stuff. That costs money to have people just to do that. We have to use modern technology to get all these records where they need to be online so we can access them. And then we have to verify that these records are actually correct. Going back to the gentleman that asked the question, there's a lot of errors in all of this, all this record keeping. And we do need to have people there that can sort through this and figure out what's real and what's not. Every time I go out to plug a well, 50% of the time, the well location's wrong. I spoke to lots of people about this. We don't have good records at all. I have to sit here and go back to the Railroad Commission and tell them, your record's wrong. This is where it really is. And then we can actually get the permit. So we waste 30 days going through permitting processes. Believe me, folks, this is what I do for a living. I file these permits. There's errors all the time. It's not good. It does need to get straightened out. It is a major problem. And I will work with the Railroad Commission to make sure that we have a better process in place right now, because I do this for a living. And guess what? When I leave, if I'm elected Railroad Commissioner, I'm still working in oil and gas in Texas. And it sure would be nice to have a better system there. And if I can help install that while I'm there, so when I leave and I'm still working, wonderful. I can say, hey, I fixed the system myself. I go back to work now. So yes, I understand the problem, and we will fix that if I'm elected.
Thank you. Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how you fix it. My understanding is that tens of millions of dollars of the budget have already been allocated to updating the technology. The problem is it's obviously not quick enough. Why are the records? I don't know. My suspect is because there's no repercussions for operators not submitting accurate records and information. And so in my mind, we need to make sure that the operators that have the information, that it's maintained properly. But and then get in there. And I don't know. I think that's going to take somebody getting in there and actually figuring out the real issues behind it, because they're trying to still switch from the mainframe computer and all of this. But yeah, I think we've got the technology. It's just a matter of someone willing to step up and actually get it done.
Thank you, Sarah, for your response. All right, so we've got another question coming in. This one is from James Caps, and this one will go to Mr. Slocum first, and then Sarah. What specifically would you do to address the water issues in West Texas?
Yes, well, we have lots of water issues in West Texas. I know this because I lived in Brownfield, Texas from 1985 until 1991. And in Brownfield, you either work in oil and gas or you're a farmer or a rancher, or you're growing wine these days. They're growing grapes out there. But they need more water, and they need it now. And we've got some contamination problems. But really, it goes back to the Level Land song. It's going to drop and blow away because farmers are using all the good water. What we have to do is we have to use big thinking here. And I've actually spoken to Alan West about this on the campaign trail, and he's all for putting in water pipelines across Texas, just like I am. We need to be shipping water around the state, all over the place. We've got thousands of miles, hundreds of thousands of miles of pipeline everywhere. Texas is massive. We move petroleum products around. There's no reason why we shouldn't be moving fresh water around. Israel does it. The Middle East does it. We can do it here in Texas. We can actually build a desal facility in Brownsville if we want to and pump it straight out of the Gulf of Mexico. Or we can go over to East Texas, where a lot of times we have too much fresh water, and we can use all this cheap negative energy prices from windmills and solar panels when things are cheap, and we can pump it around the state. That's what we ought to be doing. We got to start using our brains, but we need bold leadership. We need real fiscal conservatives in Austin to make these solutions happen, because we can grow the economy. It takes water to frack wells, it takes water to grow crops, and it takes water to raise cattle. And if we want to make more money in the state of Texas and send more revenue to Austin, of course we do, right? We're bringing in people everywhere. We have all these people flooding Texas. They're going to need two things: power and water. It's the same story it's been for 200 years, power and water. So we got to make it happen. We got to bring this water to Texans in a big way, and we got to have real leadership to make it happen. And yes, we can clean up produced water. We can advance that technology. We have to continue doing that. But that simply might not be enough here. We got to really use big thinking here.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, so my understanding from talking to the geologists and the engineers is that it's a twofold problem with, is this earthquakes or just water? What is that the question? Just the water?
Yeah, so this question, let me go back to it. What specifically would you do to address the water issues in West Texas? Nobody's asked anything about the earthquakes yet, but we'll get there.
Okay, so I saw that. I must have seen that come across the bottom of the screen earlier. Okay, so, I think one, we have to stop using fresh water in oil and gas operations. Like, we shouldn't be pulling PVA water and using it. Two, we need the Railroad Commission to have delegated authority for water management, so that after you recycle it, we can do and get it where it needs to be. Right now the EPA has given that to TCEQ. And so you've got a bifurcation of responsibility and maybe a lack of communication. And so I think that we've got an opportunity with the right leadership to really address it and tackle it. And so, yeah, I agree long term that we can be shipping this stuff and that we're going to have a lot of opportunity, but you've got to get the legal mechanism and framework corrected so that you can actually let the technology come in and do what the technology can do.
Thank you, Sarah. And Dwayne?
I would strive to use more solar power and creation of desalination plants. Tom's got a good idea. I'm not too hip on shipping the water across East Texas, but why not create desalination plants down in Brownsville? And, Sarah's got a good point about reduction in the use of fresh water for oil and gas operations. And, we really should be working on, if we're worried about conservation of water, we're worried about water, then we really should be working on a mechanism to reuse drilling fluids, recondition them, so that we're not just constantly, soaking up fresh water. It really just takes a proactive approach, a knowledge-based approach from the industry to improve water conservation out in West Texas.
Thank you, sir. All right. Reset the timer. I'll just reset it in a second. Okay. Next question actually comes in from the Janie Selson. The Texas Railroad Commission failed to enforce weatherization requirements on the industry in the February of 2021 freeze, which ultimately led to the grid failing. What are your plans to address this issue? I knew we were going to get this one. So I think first up on this one is Sarah. Are you first on this one?
I think so, probably.
Yes. Okay. Go for it.
Yeah, this is actually when Texoga took the position of not supporting the weatherization. I loudly withdrew from Texoga membership after years of being a Texoga member. And I said, you guys are delusional. We cannot continue to blame windmills. Wayne's still out there blaming windmills. No, guys, we need mechanical integrity so that winterization efforts can actually be effective. So one, we need intellectual honesty about the condition of our pipelines, our intrastate supply pipelines and midstream facilities, to be able to actually get it to where it needs to go. Two, we need to make sure that the necessary systems to support, specifically saltwater disposal, right? If you can't get rid of the water, if your water facilities freeze, you can't get the gas. And so I think it's a really big, comprehensive issue. And I don't think that there's an easy answer, because you've got all these different agencies with different jurisdiction that have to communicate and work together. So I would say that make sure that you can't just buy your way out with $1 million campaign donation to not have to winterize, and hold everyone accountable to the same standards, and get real intellectually honest with where we are in our mechanical integrity, and come up with a plan, because I realize that this can't happen overnight, but we've got to have, some long-term planning of where are we going, what's necessary. And then again, let the technical guys handle it. They can do it. We just got to get the bureaucrats out of the way.
Perfectly 90 seconds. Thank you, Sarah. All right, Dwayne, your turn, sir.
Well, the first thing that needs to be done with winter storm is the mapping of the critical load, critical infrastructure. One, that shouldn't take till 2023 to get done. You know where the natural gas is coming from for the power production units. That's got to be mapped out. The standard that's out there needs to be enforced. You need to understand, hey, this is what needs to be done. And if they don't follow the standards, they want to go their own way. You offer to them, say, hey, this is the standard we'd like you to follow. We want to ensure that these standards are followed. And if they don't follow it, you hold it accountable. But more importantly, if you elect me, I'm going to create a task force whenever there's forecasted colder temperatures. They're going to go out to these critical path sites. They're going to check them to see if they're winterized or not. And if they're not winterized, and if units fail, we're going to hold them accountable. We're not going to just play nice when it comes to people's lives, people being left out in the cold. We got to hold people accountable.
Dwayne, thank you, sir. All right, Tom, your turn.
Yes. In order to solve the problem of winterization in Texas, we had to be proactive about what we're doing here. I was proactive over the summer. I got to meet with a gentleman named Ted Wooten. Ted Wooten is now the director of critical infrastructure at the Railroad Commission. He was an expert that was hired. Look him up on LinkedIn. He's a great guy. He's got a great background. This guy is an energy expert. Okay, he was hired by the Railroad Commission. He is a paid employee there. And his job is to make sure that we have this critical infrastructure ready to go. Now, here's the issue. If the people of the Railroad Commission do not listen to Ted, that's a bad thing. And that's what's really important right now. These experts that are brought in, that are hired, that's our taxpayer money going back to being a fiscal conservative like I am. I'm always looking out for Texas taxpayers. And if we're going to spend lots of money on industry professionals and bring them in and tell us what we need to do to get better prepared, then we have to listen to them. You cannot disregard what these experts that work with you and I around this industry and know what the real problems are and know what the real solutions are. If we don't listen to them and take their advice, then we are doing not only the Railroad Commission a disservice, we're doing a disservice to every taxpayer in the state of Texas. All right. So I would continue with bringing experts in and laying out where our critical points are and addressing those. But if they give us advice, I'm going to be the first person to stand up and say, hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And it's time for you to throw those politics out the window and those campaign donations and everything else. And we got to make the right decisions for Texas, because ERCOT and the Railroad Commission are both responsible for delivering Texas. Ever since Obama and the EPA got rid of these coal-fired plants, guess what? Natural gas, baby. We are the base load power. We have to look out for ourselves before the federal government comes down here and starts sticking their nose in this business, guys. So please vote for Tom Slocum, and you're going to make sure that this gets taken care of. Promise you.
All right, next question. This one comes from Richard Welch, who's actually running for Congress. I heard a candidate in a different podcast claim he wanted to solve the Railroad Commission deficit with taxpayer donations. This isn't being fiscally conservative. How will these candidates balance the budget without additional weight on taxpayers? Dwayne, I believe you are up first, sir.
Yeah, can I see the question again, please?
Yes, sir. Up there, screen. So I heard a candidate on a different podcast claim he wanted to solve the Railroad Commission deficit with taxpayer donations. This isn't being fiscally conservative. How will these candidates balance the budget without additional weight on the taxpayers?
I'm pretty sure this is Tom's claim in another podcast, so it's really hard for me to speak to. And I don't think it was so much donations, if I heard it correctly, Tom. It was he was wanting to use, non-for-profits to tackle the abandoned orphan wells. I'm not against that. I'm pro tackling the orphan and abandoned well program. I mean, if people want to donate to solve the problems to the RRC, let's do it. But I mean, we really should have them being held accountable, them making the most out of their budget, them being efficient. I'll take it back to my days when I started out as a roughneck. Nobody can solve that problem on the rig floor like the roughneck. He knows how to get it done. So we need to put that back on the RRC. We solve their own problems, whether it's budget reductions, cutting jobs, eliminating bureaucrats, getting people with oil and gas knowledge. I mean, that's how we solve budget deficits. We decide what's the most important aspect of the budget, what needs to be done, and we tackle that. And if it doesn't fall in that purview, well, it just slides to a secondary line in the budgeting. So if you vote for me, you're going to vote for a guy that gets stuff done. That's the bottom line.
Thank you, Dwayne. All right, Mr. Slocum, your turn.
Yes, I love this question. He said taxpayer donations. Okay, did you pick up on that? It's a donation. Okay, if you're making a donation, that's not a tax. So, Mr. Welch, I just wanted to inform you of that. By definition, it's a donation. That's not a tax. Now, what is a federal tax deduction? That is money that is taken out of the federal pool in Washington, D.C. Okay, that does not come from the Texas pool of money. Do we need to plug these orphan wells? Yes. There's 3 nonprofits in Texas to do this. I have no problem with it. In fact, the Railroad Commission has just recently come out, some of these people, Wayne Christian, saying, oh, we don't have a problem with this. This is actually a great idea. They've done a full 180 on it because we're sitting here calling them out on it in public, saying we've got to eliminate these orphaned wells, and we're going to do it the best way possible. We're going to take every penny from the federal government that Uncle Joe gives us, number one. I'm going to squeeze that out of them because I'm a policy guy. And if we've got to apply for these grants and make sure they're perfectly written, then that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to get every penny that Texans have sent up to D.C. back here to plug them. Every penny that we deserve, number one. But number two, nonprofits, yes. A federal tax deduction, most certainly. And once again, that is a donation, people, all right? That's a tax write-off. No one's forcing anybody to fork money over to these nonprofits. If you want to do it, you can. Great. And you get a federal tax write-off on it. There's a lot worse things you can get a federal tax write-off for than plugging wells in Texas, all right? This is an amazing thing that you can do with your money to get rid of these orphan wells. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I think that people that started this in Montana, like the Well Done Foundation, I think they're great. So we need to see more of it. And it's a donation, people. It's not a tax. And it's coming from D.C. It's not coming from the taxpayer pool here in Texas. It's saving Texans money, period.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, I think that it starts with enforcing the rules that are on the books, and you don't let bad actors continue to leave their assets unattended. And so once you actually start enforcing the regulations equally and fairly across the board, I think that the other stuff is going to naturally correct itself, because right now, bad operators No, it's a bottom line issue. And if it's cheaper for them to not do the right thing and there's no consequences, then why would they do the right thing? And so I think we hold the bad ones accountable, we incentivize the good ones, and we get out of the way. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue going forward if we can just apply the rules.
Oh, all right. All right, let me jump back over here to some of the questions that we've had asked. Come on, let me that one again. Here we go. Question from Daryl. I believe it's important for our elected leaders to know the ins and outs of the business. Can each candidate briefly discuss oil marketing and how the price per barrel that oil companies actually receive is calculated? Happy to hear any of the multiple formulas. So a little bit more of a technical question, but with some of the laws on the books here in Texas is actually somewhat important. So I believe who's up next on this one? Mr. Slocum, you go first.
All right. Well, I have helped operate 2 small oil companies, Daryl. So great question. In Ozona and in Fort Stockton. You know what you get? You get a gatherer contract, as you know, Daryl. You call up one of these gatherers. There's numerous gatherers in the state of Texas, and you get a contract set with them. And you have to renegotiate that contract if you're smart. And they're going to tell you, we're going to give you a basis price plus whatever it's going to cost us to transport that. So crude oil marketers, there's a ton of them out there, right? Holly Frontier is who we sold our oil to in Fort Stockton. But we would work out a deal with Holly Frontier when we took over the field, and we would go back to them and say, hey, you know, we don't like we need this to be cheaper, et cetera. But it's based off of pricing that the crude oil market has. They will give you a good price as best as they can. You can call up everybody else, all their competition, but it's market driven. It's a free market deal. And it's up to you as an operator to do the best job you can to get the lowest price possible so you can make your field run very efficient. You know, it's a function of the free market. You can always fire your gatherer, pick up the phone and call somebody else. I know I've done it. We ran off, I think we ran off Holly actually in Fort Stockton and got somebody else before we got out of there. But yeah, it's a simple process, calling gas gatherers or calling your oil gatherer, depending on what product you're selling, and negotiating your contracts. Of course, picking up oil, it's a little bit different than putting gas in a pipeline. That pipeline's there, somebody owns it. That's a set deal. But yeah, it's a good question, and the free market actually leads that. And thank God that you can fire these oil haulers whenever you need to.
All right, Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, so not my area of expertise, I'll be the first to admit. My understanding is, right, like you designate on your forms. Where I've seen issues is in natural gas, is these low pressure natural gas gathering lines that you've got operators that are tied into in the field, and then they can't get their gas into those pipelines because of issues that are happening further downstream. And so that, in my mind, is one of the bigger issues, is making sure that the gas capabilities where they're supposed to be taking it, that they're actually taking it. And then on the crude, yeah, it's a free market and you can hedge and you can do all that. But that is the accounting and business side that I understand the basics of, but haven't been involved in day to day.
Dwayne?
Man, this is not really my area. I've never cashed a royalty check, so I don't have the ins and outs of it. If you want to talk about how to get to oil, how to fracture it, how to bring it to market, I'm your guy. So, I mean, it's really not that hard if you understand economics, which I understand that. It's supply and demand. It's understanding what your fees are to get it to market and then finding the best deal to get it there. But, I mean, I started out from the bottom. I'm a self-made guy. I've not been able to cash any royalty checks, so that's not my area.
No worries. Thank you, sir. All right, next up, we've got another question here from Jenny. The Railroad Commission requires critical infrastructure filings of oil companies with room for exceptions. This current storm may have hit before most companies had answers back on their exceptions. How will you monitor those types of issues if you are elected? And I believe, Sarah, you are up.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the key, just like so many of the regs, right? Like flaring. We don't want the exceptions to subsume the rule. And I think that when you have an exception, there needs to be a really good reason why you have an exception. And aside from that, I'm sorry, like you got to do what you got to do. And if you're winterizing, you need to be winterizing. And so I don't know that that's a great answer, but I think, I realize that we can't do things overnight, but at the same time, we can't be waiting 2 or 3 years. So look at the rules, enforce the rules, and if people can't comply, you penalize them.
Thank you, Sarah. Dwayne, your turn, sir.
Yeah, can we see the question again?
Yes. Oh, did I move it? Uh-oh. I gotta go back and find it. Sorry. Give me just a second. I unclicked it there. There we go. The Railroad Commission requires critical infrastructure filings of the oil companies with room for exceptions. This current storm may have hit before most companies had answers back on their exceptions. How will you monitor those types of issues if you are elected?
Well, the first thing is there needs to be a minimization to the exception rule. You know, it's really got to, honestly, there just shouldn't be that exceptions to the critical infrastructure. Secondly, like I said earlier, whenever we're forecasting for low temps, you know, we'll have a task force that goes out there and monitors these and checks the pipelines, checks the wellheads, ensures that they're ready for the winter storm. You know, accountability and transparency is what my campaign is all about, and that's how I would approach it. You know, there won't be any big campaign donations that allow operators to slide. So that's my answer.
Mr. Slocum?
Yes, I would take a very common sense approach with it. Okay, you want to file an exception for your critical infrastructure? That means that you're going to get an inspection immediately, and you're probably going to get inspected a lot more. I would put the heat on anyone that wants exceptions. And I would say you're going to be getting a visit from myself and my team here and Ted Wooten. We're going to go over this exception, and we're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and see if you really do deserve this exception. Pay very close attention to this stuff. Unlike, I believe, what really happens at the Railroad Commission right now is you just file exceptions and they probably get stamped and they move right along. I'm going to take a very close look at all this because, once again, if we end up in a big situation, bailout situation again, that's $3.4 billion, people. I don't want to spend that. You don't want to spend that. So if you have accountability there, if you have integrity, if you put me there in this position at the Railroad Commission, I will make sure that every exception that's filed gets looked over with a fine-tooth comb. And if I have to be involved in that process, doing it personally myself to make sure that we're doing the right thing here, I will. I will get very involved in the critical infrastructure, and I will work with Ted, and I will listen to him as well. So hopefully Ted Wooten is still there if I'm elected and he doesn't leave. But I would love to work with him.
Sarah?
I already went.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. I'm trying to keep track of all these questions. Somebody just asked, how are the questions being selected? Randomly through my brain. I've just got a dice that I roll in my head and then I pick one. Most of these are just coming in chronological order. All right, let me go to the one that. So this is kind of like a two-part question because they both kind of have to deal with each other. So we're going to kind of combine them into one. So we've got, how do you plan to tackle the water disposal problem in the subsurface, which kind of coincides with also what's going on? Do you have any game plan to stop the earthquakes that are happening as we speak that abruptly stop work? These two issues somewhat coincide with each other. Sarah, you went first on the last one, so now it's Dwayne's turn. Dwayne, you get to go first on this one, sir.
Thank you. So other than abruptly stopping work, I would have used a measured approach. You know, to cut the injection rates by 30%, look at the data, look at the systems, look at how much seismic activity is happening. And if it still hasn't leveled off or lightened up, I'd back it down another 10%. I would just use a trend-based algorithm to see where we're getting seismic activity, then move it lower below that threshold where we can keep doing what we're doing and not, you know, keeping the jobs healthy, keeping the economy robust. If you handle stuff on the front end and you don't wait till it gets so bad that you just got to throw the baby out with the bathwater and stop everything, that's the way that these operations need to be approached. You can't just wait and hide behind the shade and wait till it gets so bad that you have to immediately react. If you start being proactive in what you see and what you're able to do, you don't get to where you have to completely shut down the water injections.
Thank you, Dwayne. All right, Mr. Slocum, your turn.
Yeah, I was cornered in the bar in Midland about this question 3 months ago, and before the Railroad Commission shut down those wells. And my answer then is basically the same as it is now. If these earthquakes are not causing detrimental damage to the Permian Basin and costing taxpayers money, going back to me being a fiscal conservative person here, if we're not having real damage done, I'm not sure if we should really stop this injection completely. We should curtail it. I kind of like Dwayne's approach there, cutting it back on the volumes and monitoring the pressures and knowing what that well is permitted for. But what we're going to need to solve this problem ultimately is a lot more injection wells. And if we got to move above the wolf camp, like many people are telling me, I get EFT on Twitter telling me, hey, this is what we need to do. And I'm listening. I'm paying attention to experts out there that are in the industry. And they're saying, hey, we need to move above. We need to go to shallower formations. Well, we can do that, but you're going to get less volumes and you're going to get less pressures. That means you're going to have maybe 2 or 3 times as many wells. When you're injecting deep, you get higher volumes, you get higher pressures, you can put more fluid away. And they're saying that that's where these earthquakes are coming from, below the wolf camp. So we need to have a plan in place to proactively address this. If the earthquakes do get worse and they do start causing damage, we need to already be able to pivot, because we can't afford to have a shutdown in our water moving problem. That's what this oil and gas industry is about. We have a fluid issue, right? Moving fluid around issue. We have to figure out where this fluid's going. And I don't know if we need to be taking in fluid from New Mexico in large volumes if we've got our own fluid problems here in Texas. That probably needs to come to an end, because you know what, people? We're doing the liberals in New Mexico that passed their own laws to make it hard for them to dispose of water. We're doing them a huge favor by taking all this fluid in for New Mexico. We might as well just be writing checks to the governor of New Mexico and every Democrat in there every time we decide we're going to take their fluid and put it in Texas. That's not good for Texas. We got to look out for Texans. We have to put Texans and the Texas voters number one. We can't let crony capitalism get in the way. All right. So we really need more wells permitted immediately to handle this problem. We need to advance clean water solutions as fast as we can. We need to recycle water. We need to get this fluid problem under control, because right now it's completely out of control and there is no plan. The only thing they know how to do is just turn them off. And that's not a good answer. We got to have real solutions from industry people there. I'm your guy to help solve that problem. Thank you.
All right, Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, I wish we could turn back time and go back to 2014 when Oklahoma was struggling and start taking intellectually honest conversations about what Texas was going to do, but we didn't. And we didn't take the opportunity over the past 2 years in the slowdown to build the infrastructure. So now here we are. And my understanding from talking to the geologists and the engineers is that they think that it's related, yes, to the deep SWDs, but that, for years and years with the fracking, we're now moving that water, we're changing locations, and that it's not as simple as just stopping injection. So I think that we need to have a very comprehensive, again, future plan. Putting it shallower into the San Andres is not a viable option, because we can see we've got a geyser and crane. Like, that's going to continue to happen. The San Andres is overpressured. The well bores that are into the San Andres don't have mechanical integrity. So again, I think we're going to have to get really serious about our recycling efforts. And then what are we going to do with 15 to 20 million barrels of water per day? I don't know, but I agree we can't just stop, but I think it's going to take some long-term planning and some really smart people to come up with some options.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, so we've got, thank everybody for all of the questions. I think we've got more questions coming in that we're going to be able to have time to get to on all of these. But what we will do is, because these are being put out there and they are public, and each one of the candidates is on LinkedIn, anything that doesn't get answered, we can definitely have, request that they be able to go back there and then individually answer them, or be able to approach everybody. So this is the reason why this is such a great forum to be able to do this in, and I appreciate everybody that's out there watching. Kept a very consistent audience, if not grown the audience over the time span of this. So we'll do a couple more questions. One person actually asked if we can just allow the candidates to pick a question. So if you guys see a question in there that you want to be able to answer specifically, maybe we can just do a round robin there and let everybody pick one to answer themselves. That way, not all the pressure is just on me for having to pick these. Next question, and I believe who starts on this one? So we just went to Dwayne. So Tom, you'll be starting on this one. Your thoughts on tightening greenhouse gas permits. Mr. Slocum, take it away. 90 seconds, sir.
Greenhouse gas permits, yeah. So I think that we should streamline the process of the Railroad Commission to take flared gas, and especially the TCEQ as well. I'll be a huge proponent of this, to help operators take flared gas and convert it into electricity. I want free market solutions. I don't want regulations, okay? I am anti-regulation when it comes to telling operators they must eliminate their flared gas. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to bring in as much free market solutions and make it easy for operators to take this gas and do something with it. We can do that through the permitting process at the Railroad Commission, at the TCEQ. We can help them. We can get rid of the flare gas tax, right? That's my plan for reducing greenhouse gases in Texas, is to actually bring the free market solutions in and show operators this is how you make money. Stop lighting your gas on fire. All right, you're burning money. You're setting money on fire. And we're not going to regulate you into making you stop doing this. That would be wrong. We're going to show you this is how you make money on it. You're not going to get fined if you're still flaring, but here's how we make this possible. And then with orphaned wells, you get a little bit of gas coming out of orphaned wells in Texas from time to time. That happens more in big gas fields. We have a lot of oil here, but we can lock that up. We can use technology. We can use monitoring equipment to do that with. But we don't need regulations. What we do need are free market answers to come in here and help us solve these problems. And I'm ready and willing to advance those free market solutions as best as we can without passing additional regulations. If anything, we're going to eliminate, we're going to streamline, we're going to make this permitting process at TCEQ and the Railroad Commission happen faster, and we're going to reward operators for doing the right thing.
Thank you, sir. Sarah, your turn.
Look, I mean, we're about to have a satellite in October 2020 that shows methane. And so you can't hide, right? Right now, you've got operators that are venting to atmosphere based on whatever estimates of their MCF production per barrel of oil that's 30, 40 years old. And that needs to be updated. And so I think that it's going to, again, take care of itself once you have eyes in the sky that can show, and then we can figure out who the biggest polluters are, and we'll take care of it.
Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Mr. Tipton, your turn.
So this is a great question. What it comes down to is, ideally all of this gas would be going back into natural gas pipelines, going back into the system. I would incentivize and offer other ways for them to be encouraged to do this without regulation, without job-killing regulations. For me, when it comes back to is I'm an efficient guy. I want to do things as efficiently as possible, maximize our resources, but I'm not going to put forth regulation that kill Texas jobs, that hurt Texas families. And that's what's important to me. With a robust Texas economy, people's lives are better, things that are going on in Texas are better, and that's how I would pursue that.
Thank you, sir. All right. By any chance, did y'all find any questions that y'all specifically want to address?
We can't see the questions.
I have one in the comments here. If you look, Sarah, you can go to comments and look at live. This is from Ms. Janie Snelson. The Railroad Commission is governed by 3 elected commissioners who serve in staggered 6-year terms. One commissioner is elected every 2 years. There are no limits on the number of subsequent terms a commissioner can serve. What are your thoughts on this? I'll tell you exactly what my thoughts are. Term limits now. That is way too long. That is way too much power. That's the equivalent of a United States senator, a 6-year term. We don't need that. It needs to be a 4-year term. And in my humble opinion, you need to only be able to serve 1 term, maybe 2. 1 term would be plenty, because we have all these oil and gas professionals here in Texas who are super smart. We can fill in those positions with people that can handle this job. We don't need lifetime politicians, bureaucrats, sucking off the taxpayers in Texas, making deals with donors for plans 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road that they're going to help install. All right. We need people to go in there, get the job done, do a good job, and leave. That's what we need. We need accountability, and that's how you get it, by replacing these people. You're not going to give them a permanent job. You're going to give them the opportunity to serve Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Sarah or Dwayne, would y'all like to jump in on that question as well? Or do you have your own that you would like to be able to answer?
No, I'm happy to jump in on that. Term limits let me start with first. I can't stand a career politician. I feel like that they don't serve Texans and they don't serve the American public. But what I've seen from what happened in Arkansas when they went to term limits, what it did was it emboldened and it strengthened the lobbyists and special interests even further. If I'm elected, I'm not going to be a career politician staying here for 30 years. But if you set term limits, I'm telling you, just go look at the data from Arkansas. All it did was make things more easily to sway. People tried to get paid quicker in a shorter term, so the public's best interests were just left high and dry. If you don't believe me, go look at the data and look why they repealed it.
Sarah?
Sorry, I was trying to read, and the fact that Omar thinks that we didn't answer the question and that we're favoring Janie. Look, maybe we didn't understand the question. But I think
we'll address that in just a second, because I don't want anybody getting their panties in a wad today. It's me.
Yeah, but I'm not in favor of career politicians either, and I think that we need accountability and transparency. And so I'm just grateful that people are caring, right, and that there's an active push from the industry, because we're only expecting 1 million people to show up to vote in this primary. And the oil and gas industry employs, 350,000 people at least in the state. And so I think it's critical that this is something that we should be handling within the industry. And I've told people it's like a Godfather thing, right? It's like, let's keep it in the family, because if we don't clean up our own house, I firmly believe that the feds are going to come in and we're going to have overreach. And we have to step up and start taking accountability and admit that we haven't been perfect, do a better job of explaining how we provide clean, reliable energy to the world, but at the same time, not look the other way when bad operators are there. And that means politicians who aren't afraid of making people angry.
Thank you, Sarah. I do appreciate it. Okay, Omar, specifically, just your question, relax. How do you plan to tackle the water disposal problem in the subsurface? Granted, we have already addressed the water in West Texas. That was asked once before. This also has to do with the earthquake stuff in West Texas. All the candidates have talked about, taking in water from Mexico and all the other saltwater disposal wells. But because Omar wants his question asked, how do you plan to tackle water disposal problem in the subsurface? Because he nullified all 3 candidates because they said he didn't answer his question. So here we go. I don't care who goes first on this one.
I'll go. Look, I agree. A comprehensive reservoir management study is needed. I think that's what we're all saying. This is complicated. We have to take a big picture approach. And then Danny's saying that I'm vague and I don't give substance. Look, guys, these are not easy questions, and there's no simple solutions. If there were simple solutions, they'd already be done. So maybe we're actually being intellectually honest and saying we don't have all the answers. We're going to get in there. We're going to ask the hard questions and make sure that the industry experts are included so that we can figure this stuff out.
Dwayne, Tom?
I mean, it's been pretty well covered. We need a comprehensive plan of how to handle it, like she just said. We need to do studies, use data-based analytics, trends. I don't know how else we could do it. And he's talking about we're using generalities because we don't have the full breadth of the issue. Once we're in office, we'll be able to come out with 3-point plans, 7-point plans, and then attack that issue. I can tell you right now, just from me, if you ask Wayne Christian about water management, he'll say Spring Valley comes by every Friday with his water. So, these are the people that are going to have the right answers.
So going off of what Dwayne had to say, you know what Wayne Christian's nickname in East Texas is? They've named him Wastewater Wayne. So, he's taking a lot of money from these injection disposal people, everybody. Go into Open Secrets, go into TEC, Texas Ethics Commission, read the report here. I'm not taking money from those people. No way, no how. But if you want to know how to solve this problem, we have to have more injection wells, Omar, actually. And because we don't have enough, that's the reason we're having this problem. And we have to actually filter more water. We have to put less produced water back into the ground. That's how you solve this problem. And yes, Omar, you are correct. The feds are on their way. I even heard a rumor from people in D.C. that they wanted to try to classify every injection well in the state of Texas, whether it's a class 1 or 2, basically as a class 3, because they're saying, well, there's radioactive material norm that goes back into them. And so the EPA, people don't know this, every 3 years, the EPA, regardless of who is up there running it, they get to rewrite the rules. Bureaucrats, all right, unelected bureaucrats. And Omar is totally right. If we don't get ahead of this and figure out what these people in DC are trying to do to shut us down, get ahead of the curve, address it now, get more class 1 injection wells, get more class 3 injection wells, we're going to have problems. We don't have barely any class 3 injection wells in Texas that can handle everything. If you're an injection well business, you would want to go start drilling more of these immediately if the government's going to get in the business of reclassifying what fluids that you're putting down hole are. So in order to stay ahead of these liberals, we have to prepare Texas. We have to let operators know these feds up there in D.C. are trying to come after us, and this is what the game plan is going to be going forward. Here's how we're going to get ahead of that curve. We're going to clean up more water. We're going to find more places to re-inject it. And if we need to go down into different reservoirs, spread this stuff out all over, then we'll do it. But there are ways to address this problem. It's not rocket science. It's just moving water.
Okay. Sarah or Dwayne, did y'all have a question that y'all wanted to be able to specifically or address?
Yeah, I'd like to. Jeff Chestnut said, what is your experience in formulating budgets for large organizations?
Yes, sir. Go for it.
So I'd like to expand on that. So besides just experience in formulating budgets for large organizations and taking underneath large tasks and really getting things done. After the Deepwater Horizon event, GE Oil and Gas brought me on to overhaul their inspection and maintenance program and to come up with a workable solution that could be scaled worldwide. So I undertook that task, wrote all their work procedures, their inspection program. Initially, we started out just to show you what kind of budgetary and experience, trend-based things I keep talking about. We started out, the first inspection went horribly. It was about 30 days. By the second inspection, and I think the first cost was like $2 million, I had something like, 70 people on the project. By the second inspection, I drilled that down to 7 days and cut the cost by a third, ensuring that they stay in operating. After the third inspection, we were down to 3 days, a cost of about $200,000, and we were keeping rigs working. But more importantly, at the budgeting and the handling of that operation, since I put those procedures in place, GE has not had a serious well control failure and equipment failure offshore. So if I can tackle something as large as offshore inspections, maintenance of well control equipment in the Gulf of Mexico and worldwide, I can tackle the problems of the Railroad Commission.
All right. Tom or Sarah, do y'all want to also? Sarah, you're on mute right now.
Which one? I was trying to look and see if there were any of the other questions that I wanted to address.
That one was, do you have any experience with doing budgets for large organizations? Let's see, Jeff, what is your experience in formulating budgets for large organizations?
None. I'm a lawyer, so I've helped clients that have hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, but I don't have any experience in that. I'm an international trade and finance major, so I understand economics.
Mr. Slocum?
Yes, I can answer that question for you. When I first got out of college, I went to work at Apache Corporation as a contractor there, and we had hundreds of millions of dollars in our budget every year that we had to play with to plug wells offshore in the Gulf of Mexico on the shelf. Very complex problem. lots of properties. And so we had to make sure that all this money was spent very carefully and that we wrote our AFEs for the right amount of money. And that at the end of the day, we came up with a better system to track our invoices. So we knew exactly what was going on offshore at all times, how much money was being spent in real time. And we could report that back to management and make better decisions on how that money was being spent. That's exactly what I want to do at the Railroad Commission. I want to make sure that the money that is being spent by our taxpayers at the Railroad Commission is being spent carefully and wisely, because that's how you get the most bang for your buck out of everything. And so we had, like I said, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent offshore in that group. And we had to come together and figure out what the plan is going to be to spend this money every year. How many P&A spreads are we going to have out there? How many people are we going to have working? What wells are on the schedule? How is this going to look going forward so we can best manage all of this money? I did it for over 6 years there at Apache Corporation, working with a team of 40 people. Gary Tomlinson was the head of that team, and then Drew Unger took over. Both fairly good professionals. If anybody wants to do it, by my experience in helping handle this money, they can reach out to Gary Tomlinson or they can reach out to Drew. They can talk to people at Apache Corporation. I was part of that team. We did a very good job there. But we spent over $1 billion over the course of, I think it was like 7 years there, plugging wells offshore. That's a lot of money for any company to spend on any one thing, especially plugging wells offshore where people can get killed and money can be wasted. And you can easily just blow millions of dollars a day out there if you don't know what you're doing. So I have to say that I learned a lot from that process. And because of that experience, being at Apache Corporation as a subcontractor there, working on all this in-house in the building at 2000 Post Oak there, and going out into the field and making sure that we were following up with what we were doing, that was really, really key to me getting the basis for this money experience and knowing exactly how to do what we need to do. So thank you for the question. It was an excellent question.
All right. So last but not least, Sarah, you get the opportunity to be able to pick a question if you like.
Yeah, so Kate asked about tertiary recovery and CO2. And, I think pore space is going to be a big issue going forward. And one of the, I don't know enough about tax credits and all of that, but I do know that we've got lots of operators in the Permian that have been using CO2 for tertiary recovery for many years. And Oxy, Denbury, there's lots of great companies out there who have this expertise. And I think that it is going to be in the future, not just for the enhanced recovery, but for carbon sequestration. And so I think that that's a great idea. And we just need to figure out how that looks and then go and push for the legislatures who are actually drafting the laws to have the operators tell us what they want. And then we can help communicate that.
Dwayne or Tom, would you like to address this one as well?
Dwayne.
Is there any push for tax credits for new tertiary? Absolutely. We want to be able to get to the extended reach, the hard to get resources, and we should offer incentives for them to try to get to them. If I'm elected railroad commissioner, I want to make sure the main thing, this draws down to an even bigger issue, and it comes down to energy independence, security of our oil and gas market. And if we can access all of our resources by offering incentives, that's what we should do. I mean, we really have to wrestle away the control of the oil and gas market from OPEC and Russia, because let's be frank, they don't have our best interests at heart. And this is one of the ways to do it. Right now we're running a net negative in our import of about 600,000 barrels a day, which we previously had as a positive underneath Trump. The more that we are net positive in exporting oil and gas, the stronger foothold we have in the global oil market, and the stronger stick we have to push OPEC back from their initiatives.
All right, Mr. Slocum, we'll give you the last 90 seconds on this one. Please, 90 seconds, sir. I'm going to mute you.
All right. So to answer her question directly, I have helped install water floods. We installed one in Fort Stockton, Texas. That was a secondary recovery, not tertiary. And there is a tax credit associated with for that enhanced oil recovery. That's what EOR stands for, everybody, in case you didn't know. enhanced oil recovery. So there's a tax credit that you can get right now. The question is, should we do more and advance these and have more credits? Well, I don't think it would be a bad idea necessarily to do that, but you have to be able to prove that your EOR is actually working in order to get that credit. And so when you're talking about doing a CO2 flood and a water flood, going tertiary and squeezing out every last drop, yes, that's very important. And yes, we need to continue doing that. And if we can find a way to economically incentivize operators with some kind of credit there and advance this forward, then I don't see why not. It helped us when we made our decision to put this water flood in. That was part of the equation, knowing about that tax credit and knowing about qualifying for that EOR. And so that was a big part of the business plan. And yes, it is important for operators to be able to get that. So great question. And I would love to advance that as someone who's actually been personally involved in putting in secondary recovery. I do think it is very important. And oftentimes those are smaller operators trying to do this stuff. So every little bit counts. And you never know what the price of oil is going to be tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. So now we'll go ahead and we'll do the wrap up. We're going to give each candidate the last 2 minutes to be able to closing thoughts, whatever they have to be able to say to everybody out there. Thank you guys all so much for your questions. Obviously, we could probably go on for another 2 or 3 hours with all of the questions that are there. There's some excellent questions that we didn't get a chance to be able to get to. A lot of issues obviously taking place here in the state of Texas. So first up, we'll give Mr. Slocum, I'm going to put 2 minutes on here for each of you. If you go over, I'm just going to mute you so that way it's fair for everybody. We'll let Mr. Slocum go first. This is Mr. Tipton, and then Mr. Starr.
All right, I'm watching the timer in the top left.
All right, hold on. Let me get everybody else off the screen so you can have full screen effect here.
All right, maybe if we don't get all this in today, we can do round 2 later. But so listen, guys, I know all these issues because I've been working on them now for years. I know about orphaned wells. I know how to be a fiscally conservative person in Austin. I know how to hold people accountable, and I know how to get legislation moving to do the things that we need to do, like eliminating flared gas tax. I had these contacts in Austin. I know how to write legislation. I've been involved in the process before. I know how to move things forward in the state of Texas that serves Texas taxpayers, saves us money. And I know how to protect us from the federal government and Joe Biden and his administration, the people of the EPA that want to do everything they can to shut us down. All right. I've been working on getting people elected here, obviously, in Texas for quite some time. And I have these strong principle conservative values. I'm taking these values with me to the Railroad Commission so we can better handle the money, the budget that we have right now, and get more results. We need actual results for Texans. We don't need to be slapped with a bunch of liberals coming in here telling us what to do, how else to run the oil and gas industry. We got to set the example. We got to be proactive. And if you elect me and you put me in Austin, you're going to get all of that. You're going to get somebody that's got the real industry experience, that knows how to add value to the Railroad Commission, and knows how to make the industry a stronger place at the end of the day. So we don't take a bunch of heat next time we get a freeze. So we don't take a bunch of heat if there's a blowout. We don't take a bunch of heat if just something bad happens with water contamination. We need to have this fresh water ready to go. It's a big issue. We need to have more of it right now, because there's going to be contamination problems in the future, and we have to be ready to deal with them. So if you want somebody to proactively address the situation and watch over your money and be fiscally conservative, that knows these regulations, that knows Title 16, Section 1, Chapter 3 to the T, then I am your man. Thank you so much for having me, David. And maybe we can do this again before March 1st. I'd love to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. I do appreciate you taking the time to be here. Don't go away yet. You can stay behind the scenes here for just a second. I'll take you off. Mr. Tipton, thank you so much for being here as well. And your time starts now.
Well, I want to thank everyone that took the time to ask questions and to care about the issues. I'll reiterate what I said at my opening. I'm an oil and gas guy. After getting my engineering degree, I went to work as a roughneck because I wanted to build a better life for me and my family. With lots of hard work and dedication, I moved up through the ranks. I've become pretty accomplished in the oil and gas industry. And my modus is it's been twofold. It's been that the handling of Winter Storm Uri, the fact that I want to keep these jobs safe for the next generation. I want it to be there so that other people like me have a way to improve their life, improve their standing, And, I've heard people say it quite often, the quickest way out of poverty is to go to work in the oil field. And I'm going to do everything it takes to make sure that these jobs are safe for the next generation. If you vote for me, you're going to get a guy that's built everything with his own two hands, that understands hard work and dedication, and understands if he goes to Austin that he is going to be a servant of Texas people. We need to redirect how the RRC's operated. They have really two mandates, which is to be a steward of the environment and an advocate of job creation. You can't go too far one way or the other. We need somebody up there that understands the industry, understands how things are done. If you vote for me, you'll have somebody that you'll always be able to reach out to that'll hear your concerns and then take action to those concerns. If I'm elected, it's going to come down to three things that I'm going to tackle: the winterization, weatherization. I'm going to create a comprehensive energy plan that we understand what our energy needs are now, what they're going to be in 5 years, and how we're going to get there, because we don't have that currently, and we need it. We've got a lot of growth coming to the state. We got to have somebody that's going to be a railroad commissioner that has a look to the future, that has a look to what we're expecting to happen, and figure out how we're going to get there. If you vote for Dwayne Tipton, you'll get a hard-working roughneck that's going to do right by Texans.
Well, Mr. Tipton, thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And then finally, Ms. Sarah Starr. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate it. You taking all the time to answer all the questions. And your 2 minutes begin now.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I love this industry. I am the oil and gas unicorn. And I think that when we have intellectual honesty, anything's possible. But that we are at a critical junction right now in this industry. And everyone understands that we are under attack from the left. We are under attack from the federal government. And if we do not fix some of these issues and have a comprehensive approach and plan to coming out the other side together, we're going to continue to have hits that are illogical and are not in the best interest for Texans. So I've got the legal background of representing oil and gas companies. I have the operational experience of being on the ground, understanding what it actually takes to explore for and produce the minerals. And I am passionate about making sure that I leave a happy legacy and a proud legacy for my daughter, that I was an oil and gas lawyer and that she's proud of that. But we can't not clean up our messes, and we can't leave it to the taxpayers. And so I really appreciate everyone being here. And I think, it's critical. My request is vote, do your research, and then vote for whoever you think is going to do the best job. But that we all have to get out and actually show up. Early voting starts February 14th, and the primary day is March 1st. They are only expecting about 5% of registered voters to show up in the primary. If the oil and gas industry shows up and we have our family and friends vote, we can pick our next railroad commissioner. If everyone sits here and says, oh, it doesn't really matter, and we don't actually show up, then the name recognition, we're going to have another 70-something-year-old financial planner who has no oil and gas experience continue to be in this position. And I think any of us that are here would be a better choice than the current railroad commissioner. So thanks for your time and consideration, and remember to vote.
Sarah, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I'll bring all of the candidates back on one more time here. So thank you, all three of you, for being here. I really do appreciate it. Not going to lie, this has been very, very stressful for me with the ins and outs and people being here, not being here, and all of the trauma that goes along with political stuff. I am so happy that this portion of what I'm doing is now over with. Dwayne, Sarah, Tom, thank you, all three of you, so much.
Thanks to Matt Stringer too. I was going to say thanks for that.
And Matt would still be here. I think he had some other things to do. He was just going to continue watching. So Matt, thank you so much for your questions as well. And then also special thanks again to the American Association of Drilling Engineers Permian Basin chapter, the Permian Basin Association of Directional Drilling, the American Petroleum Institute Permian Basin chapter, and the IADC Permian Basin chapter as well. So pretty much the Permian Basin is what really put this on for us today. So thank you. Thank them all so much. Really do appreciate it. And I think that's the show for today. You guys stick around here. I'll take y'all off just for a second. So thank you all so much for being here and watching. If you guys want me to continue doing the Vidor Locksmith Show, please get in touch with me. Please let me know if you want to be on the show, if you got a technical expert that you think would be good. If you want me to do individual interviews with any of the candidates that I can get to be able to come back on, let me know. I'm open to getting the show back and going. I'm sorry, I've been somewhat lazy on it. So, all right. That's it from me for today. And as I always say, know your industry.